This morning how you feel about taxing corporate profits. Are they too high? Are they too low? What would you do about it as a member of the Senate?
Great point, and you're right about the fact-check observation. Joe advocates much higher taxes on business, and my concern is that's exactly the process that will drive businesses out of the United States. Why locate here if we have the most hostile tax environment? So I've said, we have the second highest business tax rate in the entire industrial world, 35%. Only Japan is higher, and they're lowering theirs. So I've argued that we should lower ours to 25%. That would make it competitive with our main trading partners and main competitors, so that our workers and our businesses would be able to compete on a level playing field. I think we should go from 35% to 25%. Joe wants to go in the opposite direction, raise taxes. That makes us less competitive, and we'll lose more jobs.
Jobs, certainly the #1 issue in this campaign.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania right now, some 600,000 people are out of work. In addition to that, what else do you do to create the kind of environment that's going to create jobs in America?
Well, you remember that the sustainable job growth, right? Sustainable growth in the economy and jobs that are going to allow people to support their families, those are going to come from the private sector. Every new government job means you actually need more private sector jobs to pay for them. So we've got to focus on not growing government, but growing the private sector. I think we need to clear away the threats that are right now having a chilling effect on businesses. The threats of the implementation of this health care bill, the massive new taxes that Joe Sestak advocates, the threats of cap and trade and what that's going to do to energy bills, which is to drive them through the roof. We've got to clear away that, provide some certainty, take the 2003 tax cuts and make them permanent so people will know they're not going to be subject to a massive new tax increase, with the exception that I would lower the top business rate from 35 to 25, and I would lower capital gains tax rates, because every time we've done that, we've seen a surge in new investment, new business startups, new job creation. That's exactly what we need right now. If we did those things and got Washington spending under control, so that people could see that we're not heading down the road towards Greece, if we did those things, then entrepreneurs and small business will expand, existing businesses will hire new workers. They will respond to that constructive environment if we create it.
If jobs is the #1 issue on people's minds, I think maybe the growing national debt is probably a close second. What programs would you tackle as a member of the Senate to cut the debt? Or are there any that you would consider off the table?
Well, there's an awful lot of things that we need to really take a hard look at. Now, it starts with ending the bailouts and bills like these stimulus bills. Joe Sestak voted for all the bailouts and then introduced his own, voted for the stimulus bill, and I think he might be the only person in America who thinks we need to spend we need $800 billion wasn't enough. It should have been $1 trillion. So I would rescind the unspent portion of the stimulus bill. I would ban earmarks. These earmarks have been incredibly wasteful, spending money on things that no one would ever spend their own money on. It's adding up to tens of billions of dollars. I think we've got to put the discretionary spending that is not directly related to security on the table and cut it back to a couple of years ago. Even the defense budget, I think it has to be on the table. We've got to make sure that men and women in harm's way are getting all the resources they need to do their job in Afghanistan and Iraq. But, we've got Congress voting for weapon systems that the Pentagon doesn't even want. That's got to come to an end.
Social Security, are you for privatizing the program? No. A plan that President Bush tried to pursue early in his second term that went nowhere. Are you in favor of that?
Privatization is a terrible mischaracterization of it. Here's what I think we need to do. First of all, my dad's 80 years old. My mom is of a similar age, okay? They've relied on Social Security for many years. It's an incredibly important program, and I would never support any change to benefits for people who are already retired or even close to retirement. But anybody who takes an honest look at this program has to acknowledge that it's not sustainable indefinitely. We all know it's got a $7 trillion unfunded liability, and we've got to do something if it's going to be there for young workers and future generations. So I've argued that we ought to give young workers a choice. They can stay in the current system if they want, exactly as is, but if they'd prefer, I'd like to give them the option to accumulate some savings within a reformed and regulated Social Security program. The accumulated savings over the 45 years that most people work could form a really substantial nest egg and be a portion of a retirement benefit that would allow us to get on a sound financial footing, would give individual workers ownership of that savings. So I think that's a really good idea to pursue. It needs to be bipartisan if we're going to tackle a big program like that, and I look forward to other ideas, but from Joe Sestak, all we get is demagoguery and proposals to raise taxes and cut benefits.
We've got just a little bit of time left. Let me ask you about the Tea Party. You've pretty effectively kept your distance from the Tea Party during this campaign, even though there seem to be some ideological similarities. Why haven't you made more of a move to kind of grab that mantle and maybe gather some of that energy behind your campaign?
I wouldn't say that I've tried to keep my distance.
No.
I've spoken to many Tea Party groups, and I'm delighted to have tremendous support. In my experience, Tea Party folks are ordinary Americans, mostly middle-class Americans. They come from all walks of life, and they're really worried about this country's future. They see the debt that we're piling up, they see the deficits, and they wonder how are their kids going to be able to achieve the standard of living that we've come to take for granted. I think they're right about that. I think there is too much spending. I think there is too much debt. And so I welcome their energy and enthusiasm for my campaign because they know I'm going to do something about it.
All right. Well, the campaign trail is about to come to a close. We wish you the best.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much for being here with us this morning. Our guest on Newsmakers has been Pat Toomey, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania. Newsmakers return